My name is Tiffany Q, and welcome to my ABRSM Grade 5 Theory Lessons series, where I record snippets of my live lessons with my students. Please note that this is not a substitute for a textbook. If you're preparing for the theory exam, I would still recommend having a teacher to guide you through both the coursework and exam paper preparation. Intervals. An interval is the distance between two notes in music. First of all, we're going to look at the distance number, or the interval number. This is your seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, so numbers. If I have a C to an E, that would be a third. Now, it's called a third because if we include the notes and we count the notes going from the C to the E, we will get 3 notes, or 3 sort of positions on the stave. What I mean by that is, if we count the first one as 1, count the next note as 2, and then the last one as 3, we get a third. We take a look at another interval, C to B, and if we count all the notes in between, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. So that's 7 notes altogether. So that there would be called a seventh. And we take a look at the keyboard here, C sharp to an E. That would be a third. Same reasoning as the first interval here. We ignore all the accidentals, we count C, D, E. All the lines and spaces in between the notes and the notes themselves. But if we take a look at this one, D flat to an E, notice how they actually sound the same. The C sharp and the D flat are enharmonic notes, so technically they will sound the same. However, because I chose to spell this as a D flat, that now becomes a second. So the interval number, or the distance number, we count the lines and spaces regardless of the accidentals. The second part of intervals is a type of interval. For each number, we have a type. In order to best learn this, I'm going to show you the properties of a major scale. So I'm just going to choose a D major scale, and then I'm going to choose maybe A flat major scale. So in every single major scale, we will always be presented with either major intervals or perfect intervals. The second, from a tonic to the supertonic, will always become a major second. D to E. If we take the tonic as the bottom note of the interval, and then we add the third on top, or the third note of the major scale, we call that a major third. However, when we get to the fourth, so we have the tonic of the major scale plus the fourth note that belongs to the major scale, that becomes a perfect fourth. Similarly, that's a perfect fifth. Then we have a major sixth, major seventh, and finally perfect eighth, or perfect octave. So that's just the same for every major scale. I want to do one in A flat major. There are a lot of flats, so I'm just going to write in the key signature first. This is a major second. This interval is a major third. This is a perfect fourth. This is a perfect fifth. This is a major sixth. This is a major seventh. And this is a perfect eighth. The next type of interval I'm going to teach you is the minor interval. For the minor interval, instead of a capital M here, I'm going to label it as a small m. how do we get a minor interval? If we take a major interval and we lower the top note of that interval by just one semitone, that automatically gives us a minor interval. So we know that this one is a major second, A flat to B flat. Well, why? Because an A flat major, thinking of the first note and the tonic note, in A flat major, the second note is a B flat. So if B flat belongs to A flat major, that makes it a major second. And that's the same for every major scale. But if you take that B flat and we make that a B double flat, that now becomes a minor second. This A flat to C is a major third. But if we make that one semitone lower into a C flat, that becomes a minor third. Let's go to our next major interval, which is the sixth, okay? Because 4 and 5 are perfects. They have separate rules, so we'll look at that another week. A flat to F natural is a major sixth. We lower that top one by a semitone, that becomes minor sixth. Same with this note. That's a G, make that a G flat, minor seventh. So what can we conclude? In any major scale in the world, if we take the tonic note and add any other note that belongs to the same scale, we will get major intervals and perfect intervals. The major intervals are your seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, and your perfect intervals are your fourths, fifths, and eighths. For our minor intervals, we take a major interval and we lower the top note of that major interval by one semitone, and that becomes our minor interval. Let's take an F going to a D. That there is a major sixth. How did I know that? Well, since the bottom note is F, I'm going to treat this like F major. I know that this here is a sixth, maybe by counting this line in spaces. Eventually, or maybe already, you would be able to do it by eye. So that there's a major sixth, because in F major, the sixth note is a D, so since that belongs, it's going to be a major sixth. If I raise both notes by one semitone, it still remains a major sixth. Let's check. F sharp major, the sixth note is indeed D sharp, so that works out. So why is this knowledge useful? Well, sometimes we might have very difficult notes. For example, in the exam, if they gave us an F flat and they asked us for a major sixth above an F flat. Well, F flat major simply doesn't exist. So what do? Well, we can transpose this note first. We can make that higher in our rough work and think of it as an F natural. Well, a major sixth above an F is just a sixth note of F major, which is easily a D. So that there is one major sixth. But that wasn't the question. This here was the question. So I'm going to transpose it back. From an F to an F flat, I go down by one semitone. So what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. Or what I do to one note, I must do to the other note in order to keep the same interval. So I'm going to lower this one also by a semitone. Note that the only thing we can do is change the accental in front of it. And that's also a major sixth. So why does this work? Well, remember, intervals are distances. So if we have two notes and we raise one by a semitone, okay, by changing the accental, and we raise the other one by a semitone, we're sort of back where we started in terms of the distance between those two notes. So that's why it works. If I had this in the exam, a B flat going to a D flat, well, first of all, I know that's a third. And so far, we've only learned about major and minor thirds. Okay, because when you come to the number 3, It's major and minor. So 4, 5, and 8 we learned are perfects if they belong to the major scale. Anyway, since the bottom note is B flat, I'm going to think of my B flat major scale. I'm going to do a rough work here. B flat major has 2 flats, B flat and E flat. And if I write out the third note of B flat major is a D natural. And that would give us a major third, because in major scales we always get major intervals and perfect intervals. Major seconds, thirds, sixths and sevenths, perfect fourths, fifths and octaves, eighths. So this one, B flat to D, would be a major third. But if we take a look at this question here, it's not a D natural, it's a D flat. So if we take a major third and we lower it by a semitone, it becomes a minor third. And that's how we would work out these questions, using our knowledge of the properties of major scales.